Back to Civil Discourse Now. He's Paul Ogden.
And that's Mark Small over there, the Wabash grad. I mean, the Blogger grad, I'm sorry.
Oh, this is not going to be
Speaking
civil.
of which, we had Carlos May on the last show. He managed to find his office number. It is the Carlos May for Congress campaign office number 721-6207. 721-6207.
That's a 317 area code.
317 area code.
In case you're watching this from Alaska.
And that's,
Yeah.
or Guam, or the International Space Station.
And they can't vote, the people in Guam, but they can donate. So
Or they could do absentee. They might be from Indiana originally. Our guest
How
for
we
this
voted
segment
for.
and the next segment is John Strinka, Socialist candidate for Indiana House of Representatives from District 39. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Huh?
What
We should ask where the district is.
I was going to ask him the
Well,
The
controversy.
district is the
So
heart of
don't you forget
Hamilton County. It is entirely in Carmel. It comprises basically the eastern three-quarters of Carmel.
And who's the incumbent, John?
The incumbent is Republican Jerry Torr.
Jerry Torr.
and what is Jerry Torr most known for?
Well, Jerry Torr obviously is Mr. Right to Work for Less. And that's one of the primary reasons I'm running, because when Republicans run for office, they talk about, creating jobs and having a sound economic climate and nice things like that, but they never talk about how they're going to do that. When they get elected, they do things like completely try to destroy collective bargaining, trampling on workers' rights, and, there's a little bit of a bait and switch going on there. One of the reasons I'm running is specifically to allow the people of the 39th District to vote on issues like right to work for less, to vote on issues, like women's health
Do you
care.
mean similar
Okay,
to-
directly.
Do you mean similar to California's proposition system?
No, I'm talking about, the thing is this, all right?
Or do you mean similar to
Mr. Torr's last election was unopposed, all right? There are no Democrats running against Mr. Torr, which we can go into the reasons for that this time out, okay? That's the reason why, as a socialist, I felt obligated to run to give the people of the 39th District an actual choice. I mean, the thing is, an uncontested election is not my idea of democracy, and if the Democrats aren't going to pick it up and walk with it, well, then we socialists will.
And you had to get signatures on the ballot.
We had to get a lot of signatures, let me tell you.
For how many?
Okay, the number for the district is 444. That varies. It's based on 2% of the total vote for the Secretary of State in that jurisdiction.
John, you're going to be careful about
In that,
hitting the table right next to the
thank
mic.
you. Thank you.
Where did you go to collect the signatures? I'm fast.
Everywhere. I went door to door. I went to shopping centers. On primary day, I was at the polling places.
And did those people
I
have-
did it. And I did a lot of signature collection at the public library.
And do those signatures have to be from people within that district?
Yes, the state is very rigorous, and I will say this
That's one
outright.
interesting adjective. I think Paul would have a
Well, I will say that outright. The purpose in Indiana, as in most other states, is to preserve the two-party duopoly and to actively make it very, very difficult for smaller parties or third parties, and particularly anybody who's trying to do things on a grassroots basis, to get on the ballot at all.
And I'm bothered by the term third party because inherently that assumes that there are two parties.
Thank you. I will take that semantic correction. It has become common, but that really points up the problem. The thing is, under our system we have this duopoly, and the problems we're having right now is that the duopoly, both parts of it, are totally and entirely owned by corporate America Inc. All right? So that you're never really going to have the current problems addressed by the current system. We have to get other parties into the process. Every government in Western Europe has a parliamentary system. They have multiple parties. They have a viable democratic discourse. And as a result of that, their everyday citizens do a lot better. It's absurd that we're still discussing health care in the United States of America, the most prosperous country on earth, while every other advanced economy provides health care for their people as a birthright.
The only thing I have to say about this, and this is coming from someone who ran as a libertarian,
Please.
and I had a friend who actually in 2011 did gather signatures to run as an independent and was listed on the ballot and one of the other district races. But if you look at, say, New Hampshire's presidential primary ballots, I mean, you basically throw $100 at the Secretary of State's office and you get on the ballot. And I think there should be some type of more of a threshold to show that serious candidates getting on the ballot rather than just anybody who has $100 and a lot of free time. And if you look at, say, Italy's legislature, for example, their legislature is constantly in fractions because they have to form these huge coalitions to get anything done because of the multiple party system.
Okay, two things about that. One is, so what if a whole bunch of people want to run for political office? I think it's tough enough getting people interested in this society to turn out to vote. I mean, so if they were shown enough interest to get on a ballot, I think that'd be a great advance. Secondly, in terms of the Italian system of government, that's a reflection of Italian society. The Italian government has been fractionalized and split up like that for decades. They are in constant turnover. French are the same way.
Can I
Well,
interrupt?
they've had a constitution for all the French.
Well, John, you already asked.
Thank you.
Should be able to speak. But
Well, at one point, and all respect because I have a lot of Italian American friends, but at one point, the Italian people, we're talking the Italians in Italy, who were tired with their fractiousness, and they put in a fellow by the name of Mussolini.
Yeah, he
And
ran,
as-
he ran
and-
trains on time.
And as I recall, that didn't really work out too well.
No.
So the point I'm trying to make here, obviously, kidding aside, is that democracy is a messy process. Okay, it's not neat, it's not orderly, it's messy. Okay, and in order for it to work properly, everybody needs to have a voice at the table. So whereas when you say yes, we only need serious candidates, and I'm not trying to pick on you here, okay, but there is a I have a very serious problem with the whole nonsense of serious people, serious candidates. All right, because what happens in popular discourse, serious people are the only ones who get on national media. Serious people are the only ones who get coverage. Serious people are the only ones who get their books read. Okay, the thing is this: you can be entirely serious with a minority opinion. My point simply is who's to judge who's serious. If we let the problem with small parties is basically our entire society is mediated. All right, and what I mean by that is essentially that yes, we talk door to door. We go to barbecues with our friends and have a beer with them and so on and so forth. But most of our lives are mediated, which means we get our information from the media. Okay. Basically mass communications, okay, the internet, so forth. We're getting things essentially mediated through third parties, okay? If you take a look, particularly in terms of, the mainstream media, you only get one point of view, okay? The dichotomies are false. Yeah, we argue all day about, gay marriage or something like that, which, as an aside, is ludicrous. I mean, tell me, why shouldn't, people arrange their personal lives any way they want? The fact that
any way you want. Okay.
That doesn't hurt others. That does not hurt others.
What about being married 3 or 4 people? You should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Taylor was married to 8 different.
As a matter of fact, you could make a very good case that serial.
So you actually support a libertarian view. I don't know what's your view, Matt, about
Well, I don't.
marriage.
Okay.
The state shouldn't be
I
involved.
don't. Well, okay. We're making the point. I don't want to get carried away on silly things.
Okay.
What my point is the fact that anyone's personal life should be the business of the state is absurd. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would want to marry more than one woman.
Personally, I don't think many people could pull something like that off. But again, that's a discretion.
Well,
And I mean,
how do you
and what I
feel,
want to talk is the fact that
Let's take
that
a
people need to be free to make their own choices.
Let's go to some of the state issues that we've got that you're confronting.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah, the so-called right to work legislation that was passed.
Right to work is horrible. This is nothing less than a bald-faced attempt to destroy collective bargaining. All right, it goes all the way back to Taft-Hartley in '47. This is essentially an invocation of that act, and interestingly, is philosophically inconsistent with the Republican position. Okay, because what the law does is it forbids an employer to enter into a contractual relationship with his employees, with the collective bargaining unit that provides for a provision for the withholding of dues. Okay, so the state is barring a private contract between an employer and a labor organization. So right there, conceptually, we're inconsistent. But here's the thing, okay? Now, what the free market people don't want to tell you is that the free market of Adam Smith is a fantasy. It's every bit as much a fantasy as the so-called socialist utopias. Okay?
Actually, Adam Smith was a socialist. If you look at his writings.
I wouldn't say that, but I would say most of his fans apparently have never bothered to read his writings because and particularly if you go back to the theory of moral sentiments, I mean, he has some pretty specific conditions on how to make free markets work, and those don't apply in 21st century America, okay? But I digress. Going back to the right to work. The point is that power as well as economics are an essential part of the relationship, okay? If an individual worker does not like the way he's treated, yes, he's free to quit, okay? And the employer can, of course, hire somebody else. The difference is it's a small inconvenience for the employer. The employee who quits, basically, he's just put his whole livelihood at stake, okay? That creates an inherent imbalance of power. The only way that can be corrected is by collective bargaining. In other words, if you take the entire workforce and have them bargain as a whole against an employer, particularly corporate ones,
so
it's the only way that you can counterbalance the party. And the employer still has the advantages, but at least this way, it forces the employer to negotiate in fairness. Because if he doesn't, basically his entire workforce would walk off, and if federal law were properly enforced, he would not be allowed to hire himself another one. Now, what right to work does, okay, by not allowing for the withdrawal of dues, by making anybody who does not join the union, by letting him opt out of dues, what they've done is they've created basically free riders. And by federal law, unions have to cover everyone in a workplace, whether they're a union member or not, okay? Well, if you're going to get the benefits of collective bargaining, and you don't have to pay for it, well, why would you bother to? You know, when the debate was going on, I would try and, meet with some people from the Chamber of Commerce and say, hey, what about if a business came to you and they said, you guys are really doing a lot for business overall, but I don't really want to pay, but I want your benefits too. So put me in your brochures and in your calendars and things, but I'm not going to pay the dues. And, they were happy about that idea.
John, we're right at the end of this segment. We'll be back in just a minute. End of this segment. We'll be back in a minute.